Hi, everyone. Welcome back. I'm Lisa Callahan.
And I'm Kari Morin.
And today's topic is fun because it's a reflection that Kari and I both keep getting from, I must say listeners for sure, but even in my real life, like people point out this thing I do, and I think you and I both do a lot, which is around our use of language. And I am a big proponent of language and making sure that we are using it so that it's working for us and not against us. So
Definitely. I think, and what we have in common as coaches, besides the fact that I agree, I think we're both this way anyway from other parts of our career and education, but as coaches, we were specifically trained in neuro-linguistic pathways, right? And some people call it neuro-linguistic programming, NLP. But it's really the understanding of how the words we use affect our brain patterns, which can have a huge impact on our emotions and ultimately our behavior.
yeah. And so, the way we talk to each other, the way we talk about ourselves, in our relationships, in our just the critter brain, the mean self-talk that we do professionally. So this is interesting. The phrase "no ifs, ands, or buts" is apparently credited to a preacher named Thomas Goodwin from a sermon all the way back in 1680. Holy shit. So the quote is, "The grants of grace run without ifs, ands, or buts." I love that.
That's so true.
Oh my God, it's so good. And so you do want to be aware of the words and, if, but, and where they're showing up in your language. And is it holding you back from moving forward? I mean, no, that's why we want to focus on it today, because to me, it is just so important that we are aware of how we speak, because the way I believe is what we put out from our mouths goes out to the universe, and we get it back. And so if you are talking in terms of buts or if, that's what you're going to get.
Yeah. And you can change the course of how you even go forward. I'm laughing though, because, when we were titling these, I was thinking back, this dates me, the Pee Wee Herman's Big Adventure movie. There's kind of a serious moment where he's, kind of just figuring out the meaning of life, really. He's like really starting to grow up and talking to somebody, a friend or a girl he's interested in. That part I'm fuzzy in my memory, but so he's asking her what she wants for herself, or and she cuts herself off by, this is my dream, but, and he goes, "Everybody I know has a big butt."
And so, yes, for listeners, Kari Morin is a 14-year-old boy. As am I. Let's be fair.
I laughed then, I'm laughing now. Right. But it's true that the wonderful poignant point of that really was, why cut ourselves off with it? Yeah.
I have a woman in my networking group who is a health coach, and her little elevator pitch starts out with, "How big is your butt?"
I love it.
But I can't do this, but I want to eat, and it's just, I have heard it a million times, and every time, just because that's how she says it. How big is your butt?
Oh, I love it.
It's so good, because it's exactly right. Like, it cuts off momentum. You could be saying, like, I'm going to go out and I'm going to, again, I'm coming from a business coach perspective right now, but I'm going to go out and I'm going to reach out to 15 people, but they probably won't answer me back. What? That but is that's that thing that just, it to me, it makes a positive statement turn into a negative assumption.
Right. And right? then it influences you.
Absolutely. Yeah. I love this. I love the idea of influencing, because you put a little example in here. I'm heading to the grocery for dinner, but I have so much to do when I get back. And it's never in a happy voice, right? Like, I'm heading to the grocery for dinner. I have so much to do when I get back. Right? Like, that's the sentence. That's the phrase. And so all of a sudden, you're not focusing on, I'm going to go get stuff at the grocery. You're focusing on all the shit you got to do when you get back. And it could keep you from actually going to the grocery, actually doing the thing that you said you were going to do, because all of a sudden you feel the heaviness of all the stuff that came after the but.
Oh
I'm
yeah.
gonna laugh through this entire thing.
I
Every
know.
time we say but.
Beavis and Butthead today. They are special
Totally.
guests.
Yeah.
Dressed as Kari and Lisa. I was thinking too, if in that same example, I might lollygag because of that but that I set up before I went. Like I might go and, taste the samples and check out all the aisles, because I have so much to do when I get home. I am masterful at when I set it up with that tone and those words. I've noticed over time myself and people in my family, people I coach, when we say but, like then all of a sudden we've put a lot of weight on whatever comes after the but, and we sort of mess up the first part too. So we could have gone efficiently. I have a lot, and that's where it comes back to, and I have a lot to do when I get back. So I'm going to go, and you're setting up expectations, just so when I come back, I'm diving into my stuff. You can put away the groceries. And a lot of that gets implied nicely. And when it's communicated with and it's all doable. I've got a certain amount of time, I'm going to do it versus, but, and everyone's going to feel bad for me. And then it might not happen. And I'm going to get home late and, oh, poor me. That's right. That's a really good point. It's when you add, but you become the victim. Right.
Right. And then oh, wow. That's just a big aha for me.
I know too. I was thinking, and when we add it invites collaboration and delegation.
Mm-hmm. And it's, anybody who's ever learned anything at all about improv, the whole thing is yes and. What else is possible? And I think that's really the funny thing. The thing that's been pointed out to me by a lot of my students is that I'll say, and they'll tell me something they're going to do. They throw a but in and I'll be like, yes, and. So I say yes, and a lot, because it's like, a lot of things can be true at once too. I also think that's the thing about but is it starts to negate things. And when you do a yes, and it allows for lots of things to be true at once.
Right. I think we'll get to that at one point too, because that reminds me of parts work, right? There's not one, but this, there's part of me this, but this, it's part of me this and part of me this.
Yep. 100%.
Yeah.
And so let's give some other reasons why we like to do this professionally.
Okay. I will say, going back to that Pee Wee example, we talk to people a lot about what they want, what they really, really want. And we ask them, what do you desire? What do you want? We love to take them into that desired state, that future place. What is it you want in your business? What is it you want in your life? What do you want with your relationships or your relationship with your kids? What do you want for them? What, any of that. And they will light up and they will talk in a different resonance. Their skin will glow differently. And it sounds like I'm exaggerating. I'm not. You've seen it. People will light up when they are talking about what's possible. And I think you and I are both believers that if you can see it, it's possible. You wouldn't have words for it.
Yep.
And then we say, oh, okay. What's getting in the way? But I can't, because I can't afford to quit my job, or and my mom needs me to do this. My kids will be, suddenly the but is the like behind this door, door number but is all the things they assume or they are like feeling martyred about or obligated to. It's all these roles they've taken on. It's all these parts of them that is just letting us know where we need to do some work there. And for them, that's where they file all the buts. Like that's where everything is filed there. Right. And then it's their reason and their excuse to do nothing. And
but they don't think they're doing nothing because they think there's all these challenges in their way, which there might be. And how do we knock them down one by one?
No, good point. Maybe it's not that they do nothing, but they don't advance. It's their reason or their excuse, or they can't help it. And that's where we get to introduce ideas like, well, how are you benefiting from not, right? Because, but not to go, but I'm going to catch myself a bunch. I think that's professionally, we get to use that a lot because we'll say, you want this, and there's a lot that's important to you here.
Yes. Mhm.
How can we look at all of it equally? Not look at one is the good guy, one is the bad guy, or one is, this Shangri-La and one is the shackles. What are the
Right.
things you can let go of? What are the things that are possible or that you would miss? How are ways these things can kind of merge together, and how do we find the timing for it? So the and is the beginning of finding the flow towards where they want to go.
Yeah. Yeah. I think what's the way you're saying this, and of course I'm seeing you. And so if you want to watch this on YouTube, it's you've got this back and forth, like it's a binary, right? When there's a but, all of a sudden it's a binary choice. I want this, but I can't have it. Says who? And so when you can take the but out and put the and in, and yes, there are some things that you're going to have to work through to get that desired state, that job, that life, that relationship, whatever it might be. But it's the minute you put but in, then it becomes, it feels less possible. I don't want to say it's impossible, it feels less possible.
And listening to you, it's reminding me that it's sounding so much like a compromise instead of a collaboration.
Mm-hmm.
Like I have to give up something to have this good thing.
Yeah. And it also feels like you have to do it all by yourself.
Yeah, true.
So, yeah. So there's 5 reasons you got gathered for us why it's better to say and instead of but. And it does it. I mean, again, to me, language is so important. And I will shout out my coach when I went through Health Coach Institute for all my certifications was Alice Moore. And she was the one that really pointed out language to me. And I hopped on that bus very quickly because I could see it. There's that saying that's been attributed to a million different people. If you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. And I think it's Henry Ford. That's mostly what I hear. And that's exactly it. So the minute you might have this, as you just said, this great desired outcome, the minute you throw but in there, it now becomes something that is maybe not possible for you. And so language to me is so important. If you say you have to work hard, you will always work hard.
Right.
So let's talk about some of the reasons to say and instead of but. Again, positive reframing, right? When you use and instead of but, it does create a lighter, more positive, inclusive tone. But gives you that contradiction or that contrast, and it can make the person you're talking to feel defensive. I think it makes yourself feel defensive, right? Because it's the minute you say but, you are putting limitations on yourself. And is inclusive. It helps build upon the ideas. Yes, and this is true, and this can also be true.
I do want people to watch this because I love how animated both of us are. When you say but, you're like, your shoulders drop, and you just light up and your hands are bouncy. So good.
Well, that's the energy it brings, though, right?
True.
I mean, it's just straight up. It's the energy that it brings. But feels depressing, and feels, let's do it.
Yeah, zippity doo dah.
Zippity doo dah.
Okay, number 2, another one. Collaboration and cooperation, I think, are also something we've already touched on with the word and. So whether it's you and 2 parts of yourself, you have 2 minds. If you could imagine them together, each having something positive for you, they're already collaborating and moving you forward, and you're not compromising. You're not having to give up one for the other. So I love that. And fosters that sense of the collaboration by just emphasizing the complementary nature of the ideas or viewpoints. I think it also encourages the integration of multiple perspectives. If you can get in that practice with your own choices of, I got these things to do and I'm going to have to do them kind of efficiently, right? Versus, but, you definitely start practicing that, and you can do that better with people as well. It's allowing you internally to practice inclusive and cooperative discussion. And I think using and, you can show different viewpoints coexist and contribute to a better outcome. So if you can do both, if I can get the shopping done and I can get my stuff done, you're going to actually feel pretty efficient and energetic versus I had to choose one.
Right. Or the things that didn't get done, the buts that didn't get
Mhm.
done, right? Now you're feeling bad and shame spiral, you know.
Right.
I want to take a second though, because we have referenced, perhaps in past pods, perhaps in future, because we record these out of order. So I'm not always
Mhm.
clear where this is landing, but let's talk a little bit about parts work, because we've
Mhm.
referenced it a couple of times, and except for our listeners who have been our students and have done this work, they may not understand what parts work is.
Mm.
I have a feeling you might explain it better than me. So you start and then I'll add.
I love that. It's true. This is either a teaser or just a closing the loop.
Right.
So if anyone's ever been in therapy or knows or is a therapist, they know about family systems parts work. It shows up in different wonderful ways and practices, but the idea is that we're all made up of parts, right? There's the part of you that gets things done, the part of you that keeps you safe, part of you that like keeps you on routines. If you've ever seen the movie Inside Out, that's a fun illustration of all the parts of this one girl's, brain and being, and what's responsible for joy and sadness and all that. But when I'm referring to it here, there's a particular NLP type of sequence or lesson that we learn around. You're working with someone and they've got two things that feel opposing. Like part of me wants to just build this business, but the other part of me is afraid if I do that I'll lose these other things that I'm doing as a volunteer or as a mom or, with this other job, whatever it is. Yep. And they really don't see that they can have both. They see that they have to choose one. And then, so they're stuck. They're absolutely stuck. And that's why they want to work through it with a coach or a therapist or, and so this type of what we call parts work is really just like finding out, it's really apropos to what we're talking about here, right? Because it's kind of saying, what are the merits of each of these and how can and bring these together and what can they learn from each other and how can they create an even better outcome together? These two opposing ideas.
Yeah, because one of the ideas is often something that is negative.
Right.
And you sort of said it, right? I want to build this business, but what might I lose? But part of me feels like, gosh, I'm going to lose my freedom. I'm going to lose my time. I'm going to blah, blah, blah. And so then the sequence is sort of, okay, so you've got these two parts. What does the positive part want to teach the part that's seemingly negative?
Right.
And what's the negative part want to teach the part that's positive?
Yeah.
And when you can realize that all of your parts have a positive intention for you around usually love, safety, and belonging, then all of a sudden that part that felt negative has a little lightness to it, because you realize that part that is fear or worried about losing belonging or safety or whatever is actually there to help. And so then you integrate the two parts together so that they do work together. So they are inclusive and they are one. I did this once with a student, and the way we do it is we always have them name each part, right? And so this one time I did it, and I said, okay, and this is not part of it, but I always ask when we integrate them together, I'm like, okay, what's that called now? So now it's not two parts, it's name something. And she just said her name. And I was like, yep, that's right. Like when you integrate together, it's just you. It was so good.
That's
so
awesome.
Hard. Yeah, it was Lou. You and I have talked about Lou.
Oh yeah.
Amazing. Yeah, she had these two great titles. And I was like, okay, when they come together, what's that name? And she was like, Lou. I was like, nope, yep, that's right. That's who that is.
Yeah. I do want to reference, in case people are thinking of the other kind of parts work of family systems. There's so many other ways that you and I don't even, use or are trained in that also uses that term, right? The family systems where, and we do get into some of that, like there's other things you can do that reference all the different parts, like the part of you that's, rebellious and the part of you that's really responsible. In therapy, I think it's just any kind of therapy that addresses the differences and conflicts and agendas between the parts that have you in emotional gridlock. That's basically kind of how I see it.
Yeah, no, that's great. So another reason to use and is it does lend itself to problem solving instead of problem sitting or creating, right? So it gives you, when you have an and, it gives you opportunity and possibility. The minute you put but, it's like a fucking anvil just comes right down and is like, well, I want this for my life, but donk. It's like a big wall just comes down. And so if you say and, you have this the possibilities are endless, right?
Yeah.
There's multiple opportunities or solutions that could get you to whatever this desired outcome is. I also think of but as closing off creativity. It's but is judgment, right? And when you are sitting in a place of judgment to others, certainly to yourself, you have just shut down creativity. All of a sudden it's the my way or the highway, and the my is the but. So this encourages and encourages brainstorming and collaboration, even within yourself.
Totally. Totally. I was just thinking of several examples all at once when you were saying that, where, someone comes into a coaching call, or someone comes into a conversation, or our children come into a conversation, and they really think they have this like hard choice to make. And all we say is like, what if you can do both?
Yeah.
And then a third way better idea that they didn't come in with can be born because they got to actually, allow themselves to figure out how they can do both in a different way.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Okay. I think also using and is fosters flexibility and open-mindedness, right? So using and instead of but, it reflects a more flexible, more open-minded approach, kind of what I was just saying. What if
Mm-hmm.
to communication? It signals a willingness to consider a different perspective or a different way of doing it, different possibilities, just instead of immediately discarding them. Like you said, but is sort of this incision, or, like it's just taking it away.
Yeah.
I think the approach leads to greater empathy, because you start to realize there's just more than one emotion at stake, right? Like there's a lot, and it can create mutual respect.
Yeah. And again, this is as much about you and other people as it's with you and you.
Mm-hmm.
Going back to this, you've got this fun thing and then you put a but in it. Now all of a sudden, if you end up not doing things because of the things you put behind the word but, the things that might challenge you, you may end up losing a little respect for yourself, because you are letting yourself down by allowing the things behind the word but to overrule what you really want in life.
Mm-hmm.
And how sad would that be?
Right. Yeah.
So then a last great reason to use and instead of but is smooth flow and connection. Again, I said it earlier, like to me, but becomes just this, like, I don't know, I picture this like steel wall just coming down in the middle of your sentence, right? And that's not, and you bump up against it, versus just being able to sort of go with the flow, right? Like, and other things are possible too. It just allows for everything to unfold as it's supposed to, versus throwing some, I don't know, not even true statement in there. That's the thing I think about a lot of things behind the but, and we've referenced this question a lot too, is after the but, ask yourself, is that true? Any of those things that you just said?
There's so much assumption. Yes.
So much assumption. And we all know what assuming does. It makes an ass out of you and me.
Ass butts. This is so fun. You know what I'm hearing and thinking about here too? I mean, whether it's with yourself or with someone else, it really is a question of not listening. And I'm thinking about like my son's in an internship right now, and he's really learning how to not steamroll, because like me, like you, he has great ideas and he knows that they will work, right? And he's learning to work collaboratively. So he's making a suggestion. What if we modeled it this way after traffic patterns? And it's a math algorithm. He's in a really high level math camp. Can't even say more than that because I don't understand it. But and he's with some really bright people. And this one member of the group really wanted to do things the way she really wanted to do it this certain way. She saw it this certain way. She's got a lot of experience with tennis. She wants to use tennis as the model for this algorithm. And they were all trying to get her, like, how about we do it this way? And when it was his turn, he had thought it all out. He'd offered a way to kind of incorporate it. And she kept going, but I don't see how we can do it. And they were thinking, we just showed you a bunch of different ways, right? And, and that, but is a way, not to malign this poor, probably brilliant, wonderful person. I think of that as an example of but allows me not to really listen to you and keep going with what I think I want to do. So,
and it shuts down creativity. She said, I can't figure
Mhm.
out how to do this. Well, because you are stuck on one way.
Exactly. And I think we can do that to ourselves.
Oh,
We can do the
100%.
same thing. Just,
No
but
question.
and shut it all down. I didn't even hear the other part of me that was so brilliant. So yeah.
Right. Yeah. No, I definitely agree. So you think there's some places where but is necessary?
It's funny. Like I would come, but I don't want to.
I mean, that feels a little harsh. I'm not going to lie. I feel like there's a better way of saying that.
Okay. I probably, all bravado here. I probably will never say that, but I love the idea of saying it.
You can say it in your head. You say it in your inside voice.
My sister gave her son a book that's something like, it was such a joke and so funny. I think it's a book for introverts. Sorry, I'm late. I didn't want to come, or something like that. It's like a joke. So funny. I think, but sometimes has a comedic or an important role, but I said I didn't want to really be heard. Sure. If someone's really trying to steamroll you, thank you. But again, I'm not interested, so I do think, but can be on your side a little bit.
Oh my God, we really are 14-year-old boys. I'm sorry to 14-year-old boys. We're 14-year-old girls. They laugh at this stuff too. Okay, but are there times where but is necessary? But even then I can see where you're putting it. I hear you. True. And I already told you, I don't want to go to that. I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
I don't know that but's even necessary. I don't know. I'm trying to think of when would
listeners please call in with your
long-time listener, first-time caller. We don't actually have a call-in number. That'd be fun though. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know when but's necessary. I mean, it must be. It's a part of the language, but I don't know. And I just keep saying it. I don't know when it's necessary. Maybe when I just said it there, but I don't know when it's necessary. And I don't know when it's necessary.
It's funny.
I think that's a call to action.
Funny that you say that, because I did look that up earlier and I'm remembering it. So I'm just looking at the examples they give are not good. You will argue with them. She's 83, but still goes swimming every day. I think and is way more impressive.
Totally. Yeah. What now it's making it now that's an interesting one, because it's making the first thing about her being 83 bad. Right. Mm-hmm. Again, but somehow to me, but gives the opposite sentences or phrases morality. One is good and one is not.
Or one's surprising, or it's not the norm in that case. Right. And it is it's an independent clause that can it's like, it's linking to independent ideas, but I think Anne does that more powerfully.
Agreed.
Let me see. I think I've kept another example. I want to go to the party, but I am so tired.
Okay. That one feels right. Yeah. That one makes sense.
I like her, but I don't like her friend. I studied for the test, but I don't think I did well. I'm hungry, but I have nothing to eat.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think and fits in any of those, but I don't know if it changes in those instances, I don't know that putting and in instead of but changes anything. So maybe there's the difference. Right?
Well, here's another fun one. Yet is a good replacement for but.
Oh, interesting.
In some cases, is both are coordinating conjunctions that can introduce a contrast. So yet, I don't know. I still think and allows both to be as strong.
Yeah, I agree.
This example for yet, I like Brian May, yet I find his hair ridiculous.
I mean, I feel like those could just be two sentences. I don't know why there even needs to be a yet in there.
Or a but or an and, just a period, second sentence.
Just is. Here's the thing. To me, and means yes. And but means no. Yes. And what is the harm in assuming everything is possible? I mean, that's just, and I think it doesn't mean everything's going to work out exactly the way you expect it to. But again, it goes back to, if you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. So, and yes, and gives you all the possibilities, but throws a hammer down and says, maybe not.
Right. Yes. And my biggest takeaway from when I switched that in my language was not to diminish anything about the first part of the sentence.
Yes. It's like, goes back to sorry, not sorry. But in some ways it's like saying sorry. It diminishes something.
Because even like, I would say that's a perfect example that I just read for yesterday. Was my youngest Miles's last final, and he doesn't feel like he did well. He studied hard and he doesn't feel like he did well. They're both equally, true. And one isn't like, I didn't do well. It doesn't overpower the fact that he worked really hard. And, he didn't have a lot of control over how that went. So yeah, I agree. I think it's always for me been don't negate the first part, with the, but it just really diminishes everything else. So.
And when I think about, I brought this to your attention. We turned it into being more about language in some ways, but I brought it to your attention because I do have one particular student, Christy, who was like, you always say, and there, when she says something, I'm like, and sometimes I'm asking her to fill in that and it usually is coming from a space of she's telling me the things that, she can't do or she thinks she can't do. Right. And I'll be like, yes, and so this is really what I texted you after this. I was like, we should do a topic on this. And it turned in a little bit more about language in general. But it is something I think we both coach around a lot, is all the possibilities and trying. And I know I've said this in a few other pods as well, like this sense of, as a coach, it's easier for us to see the possibilities for our clients than it is for them in the weeds, right? Because there's a lot going on in their head that will throw up the but. And as a coach, we do come in and present to them, here's all the possibilities. Here's all the possibilities I hear you saying. And what would you like to do next?
Well, right. And that's, I think the whole point of this is it isn't so much about language. It's why language is so important, because feel the energy, feel what's possible and feel the direction it goes. One certain ways we use words give us momentum, and certain words just keep us stuck or cause us to freeze or, really zap our energy. So I think that's the point here is yes. And is where we get into yes. And yes, these things are hard. Yes, these things are true. And so what do you want now? So we're not negating that these things are in your way. And how do we get around it? How do we get through it? How do we actually figure out how big you think this is even true? And so the yes and means everything is valid here and everything's possible when we put it all on the table.
Yeah.
The yes and instead of the no or the buts or the negativity and the hedging removes a bunch of options.
Yep.
And that's the point, I think.
And then makes your path a little more clear and a little more joyful.
I have people in my life, including some of my kids, but a friend I text with often who will, in all caps, if we're texting or if he and I are talking, will catch himself and say, and sort of mock me, but also wants me to be proud, So
yeah. I get that a lot too. I'm making fun of you, but look what I've learned.
Yeah.
So
and I think there's a lot, there's just a lot about language that, as you say, I'll give you one other example. People will say, that's just how I am, right? Oh, it's just how I am. That's just how she is. It's a really common thing. It's just how I am.
Yeah.
I think you believe this. That cuts off growth.
100%.
Can't talk growth cuts off growth. when we say that, it's one of the most unloving things you can say about yourself or someone else, even if you're saying it casually. I think one of the most powerful things I learned from a mentor was to stop yourself before you say that and say, in the past, even if it was up till 5 minutes ago, in the past, I was someone who would often look at things this way. I'm now working on this. And just the power of slowing it down and restating it, as silly and as awkward as it is the first time, you're shifting your brain.
I do sometimes go, would you like to say that to me again?
Yeah.
I'm talking to a client, like, how about you restate that for me? And they'll kind of look at me like, what? I'm like, try again.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, notice that we are listening to no one more than we're listening to ourselves. So when you're saying that internally or you're saying it out loud, you are making it truer and truer, and you're forming those neural pathways that kind of keep the same loops going. So when you say, in the past, I was someone who had trouble staying organized, but I'm working on that and I'm learning how, right? There's just, it's a totally different energy than I'm not an organized person.
Yep.
You know?
Yep. It just, yeah, absolutely. So I immediately went to this song because it made total sense. And then as I was looking at the lyrics before we taped, I thought, I don't even know if it does make sense, but now that we're having this conversation, it goes back to making sense. So we're quoting words from Missing Persons. So we're going back to the 80s. And I do, a reason it strikes me as being apropos of this conversation is because you mentioned the idea of not listening, right? The minute you put a button in it, it just shuts the door, and you're not listening to yourself, you're not listening to others, because you've decided it is this one way. And so that does actually work for these lyrics. So here they go. What are words for when no one listens anymore? What are words for when no one listens? What are words for when no one listens? There's no use talking anymore. Yeah, and then it repeats itself, so I'm not going to say it again. But
you hear me?
I don't like the phrase. What is it? So I'm going to dye my hair blue. That's right.
No one's listening.
Yeah,
I do love that. There was actually several songs that had no ifs, ands, or buts in it, but I don't think we had time to go down that. We didn't know them, so we weren't going to pick them. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
Sometimes
right. We go with gut. Sometimes it's very clear.
Yeah. I loved this episode, and that's it. And I love this conversation, and it's time to wrap up.
Yes, not but, and it's time to wrap up.
Yeah.
So as usual, if you found this to be helpful or useful or entertaining in any way, shape, or form, this would be a perfect time, since you're still here with us, to go ahead and rate this, no matter what platform you're looking on. Apple's great. I'll say a shout out to Apple, because you can give us stars and write a review. And I go in and peek every once in a while, and a new one pops up, and it just makes me so happy. So if you can, right when you get done, just take a minute on Spotify, on Apple, on Audible, wherever you're listening, and go ahead and rate this program, because that will be very helpful to us.
Yes, thank you. And we drop every week on a Tuesday with occasional bonus episodes in between. So I think we'll keep you entertained. If you want to keep coming back, we'll be here.
Absolutely. That's it for now. Talk to you next week. Bye.
Bye.